everyone, today I am going to show you how I make my book covers for junk journals. It's a really simple process. I don't like to make things too complicated, and you don't need a lot of materials really. It's just the kind of things that you'll already have in your stash. The one thing that you do need that you might not have is the 300 GSM A3 card. I've got mine in ivory here and it's from Craft UK. But any 300 GSM card that's big enough to make the cover, you'll see the measurements, but you can use whatever you like. So this is the kind of cover that I usually make. It's made from the card and then it's matted on the outer side and the inside. And it's thin enough that you can get the needle through to make your binding. And I like to use embroidery floss on the binding so that it just adds a little bit of extra detail and you don't really need to hide it anywhere. So let's get started. Well, I'll show you everything that I need first, but everything that I use. So I use, as I say, my A3 card. Sorry, struggling to focus on that. So that's 300 GSM in weight. Then I have my design card. So this is, it was just from quite a cheap 12 by 12 scrapbook and paper pad. So I'm going to use this on the outer. Haven't really chosen my inner one yet. Oh, that'll be perfect. So I'm going for a kind of shabby chic look for this. So this is going to be my inner paper. You'll need some embroidery floss for later on that will coordinate with your design papers. And then I'm using my paper trimmer. I've got a tonic one and this is a really good paper trimmer and I would be lost without it. I love it. And then I just use this double-sided tape. This is just cheap. It was from Sainsbury's, I think. But it does the job just perfectly. You'll need a scoreboard if you don't have a paper trimmer with a scorer. I'm just going to zoom out there so that you can see the full... Oh, wrong way. So you can see the full thing. So you'll have to excuse, you can see a bit more of my mess there. So you'll need to score it as well as cut it. But my trimmer does both. Makes things very easy. So this is the scoring tool I'm just adding now. Okay, so as you can see, my paper trimmer isn't big enough to cut lengthways, but I'll show you how I do that as well. So the first score line that you need is going to be at 15.5 centimetres. I'm going to make the spine 4.5 centimetres, but you can make it as wide as you want, well as wide as your card will allow. And then I'm going to change over to the cutting blade, and then I'm cutting from this score line that I've just done at 15.5 centimetres again. So those two score lines that I've just made, I'm going to burnish the creases in. So I just like to bend it a bit at a time, just to make sure that the crease stays where I want it. Oh, that's not my scoring tool. And then give it a good squash down. When you have a raised up, I don't know if you can see, this has got a bit of a lip on it, but you can squash that down as well. And it'll just give you a nice finish to the edge. Just give it a squash. And make sure that that line matches and this line matches to get your fold in the right place. Should be in the right place anyway, but it's always worthwhile checking. and burnish again with the scoring tool. So now you can see we've got the shape of the book already. Okay, so because it wouldn't fit in lengthways, thankfully this trimmer can cut through the 2 layers of card. This is going to be 21.5 centimetres high. I'm squashing the card down to make sure that it's nice and even, nothing's moved out of place where I'm going to get a wonky line. And then cut. And there you have it, you've got a cover ready to decorate. Now, I like to make sure that all of my covers have like a vintage kind of feel to them. So what I use is Vintage Photo by Tim Holtz in the Distress ink. And I've got the blending tool as well. I'll just use the straight one, but a round one would be fine. I've just changed my blending tool. I have pet rats and they've been chewing my other one, which can't be very good for them, but I've got to let them out and play, and there's not a lot more that damage they can do to what they've already done. But anyway, just need to keep my supplies out of the way really. So I'm just inking the edges, and I do the creases as well. Gives everything a nice border, and then even don't worry about making a mess like that because it's going to be covered up anyway. So yeah, it just keeps it all tied together as well, so that the theme, even if you're using different colours and different styles of papers, if you distress the edges of all of them, it just makes them look like they're supposed to be together. I tend to do it with all of my pages as well, apart from the ones that I've stained with tea. I just leave the tea stained pages as they are because they're already vintage enough looking. It can be time consuming, but I think it's quite therapeutic sometimes. I'm sorry if you can hear that noise in the background, that's just the rats getting a drink. So set that to one side. Get your paper trimmer out again. Get your first design paper. You can do it all in the same design of course, but I just like to have things looking a bit different. Okay, so this edge measures 21.5 centimetres, sorry, by 15.5 centimetres. So we're going to leave a small border. I'll show you on that first book that I've cut there. So you can see this border around here. We're going to cut this paper slightly smaller. So this is going to be 21 centimetres by 15 centimetres. So we need 2 of these pieces, one for the front, one for the back. I've got those. And then you need one for the spine. Often I do a contrasting piece. On this one I did a contrasting piece for the spine. To be honest, it depends if I've got enough in the same paper to do the same around the spine. I can't tell if it matters which way this paper goes, because the paper was like that, was it? Yeah, paper was like that. So does it matter if I turn it? I don't think it does, so I'm just going to use the same piece for this. Oh no, I'm going to use the reverse of that for the spine. So let's check, what did the spine measure? It was 4.5 centimetres by 21.5 centimetres. So I'm going to do this 21 by 4. When you have little pieces like this, don't throw them out, because I'll show you how to use those in a later video. So what I love about junk journaling, there is very little waste. I like to use all of my scraps as much as possible. So I'm just going to lay these out so that we can check that they fit. Even pieces like this, keep them to one side, because we can make belly bands and all sorts of those. So this is how my cover's going to look. Now, I need to ink these pages as well, these pieces. First I will cut the inner pieces, and then I'll ink them all together. So we're going to make the pieces to go in the inside cover. You don't need a spine piece for the inside. You probably could if you wanted to strengthen it a little bit, but I don't think it's really needed. I've never done one yet. They're going to be the same measurements. (21 centimetres by 15). Tiny pieces like this can go in the bin. So they will go on the inside like that. Again, I'm going to ink all of those. So you just need to ink the side that's going to be shown. Okay, so the next step is to stick them down. And for this, as I said, I like to use this tape, just double-sided tape in a fairly wide size. This is 2 centimeters wide. You can use glue, something like tacky glue would work fine, but I just prefer to use this because then I know it's going to lie flat and I'm not going to get any ripples, no matter what kind of paper I'm using as the design on the cover. There we go, so there's the outer cover. And then do the same for the inner cover. So there we have the cover, or at least the basic cover. Now what I like to do is add pockets to the front and pockets to the inner corners so that you've got places to slot notes and photographs and things, and it just adds a bit of interest as well. If you wanted to, you could add a piece of ribbon underneath or on top, it doesn't matter, and leave it hanging out of the edge so that you could tie it at the side there. Something I often like to do. Okay, so for the next part I'm going to show you how I decorate the cover. Okay, so I've gathered some supplies to make the front a bit more interesting and the inside cover as well. So first of all, I've found this piece of lace trim. It's quite narrow, but it'll do for what I want because I want to tie it. I'm just going to fold that and cut it in half because I'm going to glue it down in 2 separate pieces. So one piece will go there and one piece will go there, so it's not going to cross over the spine. As I say, you could have done that underneath the design paper, or you could have strapped it all the way around the back. But I've just chosen to do it this way so that it doesn't interfere with the binding, which we're going to do at a later date. Okay, so I've cut that ready. It's all good to go. So on the front I want to make a pocket. And I've got this paper, this came out of a magazine. And I've got my trimmer. See, this is what happens to me. I end up with a massive mess around us. I start off all nice and tidy with the intention of working in a tidy manner, but it never goes like that. Right. So I want this pocket to go halfway up the page and it to be the full width of this design paper. So it needs to be 10.5 centimetres. Hey, that was fast maths for me. 10.5 centimetres by 15. At least it should be, so let's test that. Cool. I've changed my mind though. I want it a bit higher than that. Because, I'll show you why. I want this to be halfway. So it would be a bit higher than that. To be halfway up the page. So what I'm going to do is add, I think a 0.5 centimetre should do it. I'll use that for something else later. So 15 by 11 we'll go for now. By 11 centimetres. And then we'll put the trim on that extra 0.5 centimetre up there. Does that make sense? I hope so. Right. So I want to ink the edges of that piece. So again, it ties in nicely. So this is paper, and if it was card I would have tacky glued it on, but since it's a paper I'm just going to use this narrow, actually for the bottom line, so that's going to be down the bottom. I'm going to use the wide tape. So that it's got a good strong anchor at the bottom, and then I'm going to use the narrow tape for the sides. Just cut those edges to trim them to size. Double thickness though, double width rather. Oops. Oh well, that'll just add to the distressed look of my cover. Just embrace the accidents, that's my advice. The thing with junk journaling is if you ever have a big glaring mistake, you can just cover it over with something else. So you never have to start again. Well, rarely have to start again from the beginning. So I'm lining that up with the corners. Looks pretty already. Now for the next bit, I'm going to use, I don't know where I got these, I think it was just from like a cheap shop that sells party supplies. They weren't very much, I don't think I paid for specific craft ones. They are quite thin. I suppose you could use two. Let's try that, see if we can use two. Because they're all stuck together with the, where it's being punched, it might hold up. In fact, I might just use that bit. Yeah, so you see how thin a single one is, whereas when they're just all together like that, I'm going to try it. Try it and see. There's only one way to find out, isn't there? So I'm just going to make that into a corner shape. When you're cutting something with complicated edges like this, I would suggest that you start cutting in the centre of it and then go up and down. Just because, as you can see there, these bits have a tendency to, let's just cut that bit off actually. They have a tendency to just get chewed up in your cutter. So try and do those a little bit at a time. There we go. It doesn't matter so much about those little rough edges there, because they're going to get inked anyway. So that just makes an extra little tuck spot on the side. Can you see? Like that. Okay, so I want to glue this down somehow. I'm going to use the narrow gauge tape. Just be careful with your pokey tool if you're using one, because you can just easily punch through thin paper like this. I'll try and use my nail instead. Come on, doesn't want to lift for me. As you can see, that's peeling away, so I might have to do another layer. So I've got 3 layers there. What I'm going to do is just add some tape to each of those to keep it down. I'm not going to worry too much about the frilly bit, and I'm not intending each of those to be pockets. So you could do down there if the same thing happened to you. Which you probably won't if you've learned from my mistakes. this is why I hate using this narrow tape. There we go, so we've got that little tuck spot down there. And you can add something. I've got these little tiny tags that I like to pop in, things like that. Maybe need something bigger. Oh, I think I had, yes, a little journal card, so that could slot in there quite nicely. You should have inked the edges there. See if I can add it after the fact. Just lightly so I don't ruin it. Okay, found some tacky glue. So I've just zoomed in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing now. All I'm doing is adding a nice thin line, she says. Come on, it worked a second ago. There. Plenty of glue on there. And then add the trim. This on my hand is tacky glue as well. I've just wiped a blob up and had nowhere to put it. I could have gone and got a cloth, but I'm too lazy. Right, so got that side on. That looks a bit uneven in the camera. There, that's better, I think. And then I'm going to do another one just straight across here without adding any pockets or anything. Just using that to see where it'll go. And then stick it down. There, and I think that's going to look really pretty. Okay, so this is the front cover. This is the back cover so far. So I'm going to put some pockets on these pages as well. I'll do the back one first because that's really simple. Let's zoom out again. So I'm going to use the stripy brown for the back. Okay, so we'll make it a nice big one. 12 centimeters by 13. And this is just going to be really basic, a large corner tuck. All I'm doing is rounding one corner because that's going to be the open corner. I'm going to use some tape down these two edges and then you'll just be able to slot things behind there. Again, I'm inking the edges. All 4 edges. And then using the large tape. Actually no, I'll use the tacky glue since I've got it. and it's both cards, so when I'm using tacky glue for things to be stuck in, you usually find piles of things all over my work. So this water bottle, and what else can I use? This is all of the rubbish that I've got out of shot. So there's just a stamping acrylic block, just to weigh it down until it's completely stuck. It doesn't take very long to get a good stick. So next we're going to do this one, and I want to make the pocket fit the full width, and it's going to be a double tier one. So I'm going to have one colour behind and then one colour in front. I really should have moved that out the way, it would have made much more sense. But I always like to do things differently. Okay, I think I'm going to use this as the front piece. So that is 12 centimetres. So I'm going to make it 12 centimetres by 15. Then I've got this cute card as well, and that needs to be longer, so it's going to be, what did I say, 12, so 13, 14, take it up to 15 centimetres by 15. And it's going to be stuck in. Actually, I think that's going to be too tall. I'm going to trim a bit off there. I'm going to trim it 2 centimetres off both of those. So I'm reading this side at the minute to get 2 centimetres off that. Nope, that doesn't look like enough. Make it 3. 3 centimetres off there. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't want the pockets to be too deep that things get lost inside them. There, so it's going to be stuck down like that. Just ink the edges of those. You only need to ink the bits that are going to be on display. Going to be like that. No, I'm not using that. I'm going to use tacky glue again. I'm in the habit of using the tape, so I keep going to use it. That goes onto there. And up, squash it down. If you have any glue come out the edges, just give it a wipe with your finger. Turn it over and then do the same for the whole edge of that. This one's fairly well stuck now. Okay, so I'll just show you how that looks. So this will be tied. It isn't quite dry yet, so I don't want to fuss it too much. So we've got a pocket here, a tuck spot there, and then the tie, obviously. The back's just plain, but with a piece of the tie. And then inside we've got a nice big tuck spot, and then 2 large pockets as well there. So there we have the front cover of our journal. As you can see, it's really easy to do. I think this is the easiest way I've known of doing it, and it's the way that I always use, and they hold up quite well as well. I've never had any of my books too badly damaged where they couldn't be salvaged, so to me it works perfectly really. So for the next tutorial I'm going to show you how I select my papers and how I bind them into the spine. That might be, well, I'll decide later when that's going to be, but I'll keep you updated. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.